I want to be able to shoot sub-MOA groups out of this rifle with the heavier 117 and 120 grain 25 caliber bullets. So today we're going to pick a load to make that happen. So we're going to select the bullet for this rifle. We're going to pick a powder, we're going to go over the brass, and we're going to go over the primer. And keep in mind, this isn't just about getting sub-MOA groups. This is a hunting rifle. So we also want to pick a load that's just going to perform outstandingly in the field deer hunting. So let's get started on this one. For the 257 Roberts and basically all of the 25 caliber quarter bores, we essentially have two options as far as bullet weight for medium-sized game, deer. All right, we've got the 100 grain class bullets traveling roughly 3,100 feet per second. So very similar to a 243 Winchester. And then we have the 117, 120 grain class bullets traveling roughly 2,800 feet per second. The 100 grain bullets would handle pretty much anything I needed, honestly. I don't think I would ever have an issue. But going back to our purpose here with this rifle, I want it for those really hard to get to places, public land, way back in the bushes. And that's why I started with purpose on the series. Because that's the purpose for the rifle, knowing what I'm going to get to in those places, rough terrain and so forth. I want to make sure I get really good penetration. And keep in mind, thick vegetation. Oftentimes we're shooting through lanes or holes in the vegetation, and we're just seeing pieces of the deer. I mean, we can see the deer, we know what it is, we're not just shooting in the bushes. But we don't get the weight for that perfect angle. We're not getting that perfect broadside shot. And we've got to make the shot quick. And we've got to be able to reach vitals no matter what the angle. That's why I want the extra penetration. And keep in mind, rough terrain, we also have changes in angles as far as our elevation. So not only are we possibly shooting at a deer that's really quartering away from us, but we might be doing it on the ridge up above us or in the hollow directly below us. It's a lot of challenging shots there. I want the extra penetration. And if possible, I want an exit wound. Exit wounds make it a lot easier tracking deer. And in the type of stuff I'm talking about, stuff so thick that you don't see the deer on the ground when you're tracking it until you just about trip over it. The thick stuff. I want that extra insurance. And that's my reasoning for being so insistent upon shooting the heavier 117 and 120 grain bullets in the 257 Roberts. And you got to keep an open mind on all of this and just think about it from a step back sometimes and really think about what's going on here. Going up to the heavier bullets in a 25 caliber, so going up to the 117, 120 grain class bullets, that's not the same as going up to the heavier bullets in the 30 caliber or sub-millimeter, where you're looking at 175 grain bullets or 200 grain bullets on the upper end. Right? You don't have to go to those to the upper end on the sub-millimeters and 30 calibers and the other cartridges, because the bullets are already just so much more massive. But in the quarter bores, especially at 257 Roberts velocities, I want that extra penetration. And the 100 grains would work perfectly, especially in normal hunting conditions. Semi-open ground, open ground. Open ground, I'd want the 100 grain bullets for that extra velocity and flatter trajectory. But that's not what we're setting up for. So I think the 120 grains are going to be our best option. And as far as me being so insistent upon the rifle shooting these heavier bullets and the under 1 MOA group, Well, the under 1 MOA, that's just for the principle of the matter of me having so much trouble getting these bullets to shoot good in the XTR featherweights. So we've taken care of the hard part. We picked the bullet weight. Now all we've got to do is just pick from one of the three options I've got here. And we've got the 120 grain Spear hot cores. We've got the 117 grain Sierra Game Kings. And then we have the 117 grain Hornady interlocks. Any one of these three would do a good job, but I am leaning heavily toward the Spear hot cores. I just really like the hot core bullets. I think the hot cores are the most underrated hunting bullet there is, by far. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. The main reason being they just haven't got any marketing in who knows how long. And as far as I know, the hot cores have never been used in a factory loading or factory ammo. So very few people have ever even heard of these. This is something pretty much just for reloaders. Well, these bullets, the hot cores, they've been out since the 60s. And if I'm not mistaken, these were Vernon Spear's last creation. And they're not a true bonded bullet, but they're really close to it. And the way these are made is hot molten lead is poured into the copper jacket rather than a lead billet pressed into a copper jacket like most cup and core bullets are constructed. So again, these aren't a true bonded bullet, but really close in performance. And these are just a boring bullet. I love boring bullets. You shoot the deer, you go get the deer, you go home. That's what I want from a hunting bullet. That consistency, that it does it every time, and the hot cores generally have. Okay, Sierra Game Kings. Excellent bullet. I've always gotten great accuracy from Sierra bullets, especially the Game Kings. And the Game Kings, generally they're a soft bullet. They're a boat tail soft point, and as with most boat tail soft points, these are designed for shooting distances. And they're designed to be softer bullets so that you get really good expansion at those slower impact velocities at a distance. These should work really well in 257 Roberts, even at impacts close range, because 257 Roberts is already running slower than most of your more popular quarter bores like the 25-06 or 257 Weatherby Magnum. So I think these would just be an outstanding bullet, whereas these bullets and some of the faster, higher velocity cartridges, I'd be worried about them fragmenting at close range impacts because they are such a soft bullet. I think they'd be a great option for 257 Roberts. And then we have the Hornady interlocks, which are a flat-based, fairly tough hunting bullet, which I'm also convinced will do a great job. It's just Hornady's on my naughty list right now. There's some rumored things that have occurred during the past couple of years, something involving some vax mandates with employees from their CEO, and I'm sensitive to such things. So I'm not worried about these. All right, so this basically comes down to the hot cores and the Sierras, and I'm going to go with the hot cores, I believe. And then if we don't get the accuracy results we want from the hot cores, then we'll try the Game Kings. Either one's going to be a great option. All right, so we have our bullet. Now to choose a powder. And this is the tough part for 257 Roberts because there's so many powders that'll work for it. And this is also tough because of my philosophy when it comes to pressures and velocity. Okay, this is a hunting load, and I want to take full advantage of the performance capabilities of the cartridge. At the same time, I'm not trying to make this into something it's not. Okay, so I'm not trying to get 25-06 velocities out of 257 Roberts. If I wanted 25-06 velocities, I'd have got a 25-06. But I want to get everything I can safely within pressure limits. So since I'm not pushing the pressure to get the velocities I want, the max velocities out of this case, that means I got to pick the most efficient powder I can. And in the case of 257 Roberts, like I said, that's kind of tough because there's so many options to choose from. All right, so what I like to do in a situation like this, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up Hodgdon's burn rate chart. Okay, and it's free from their website in a PDF, and it gives you the burn rate of all the various powders. All right, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start looking at the velocities and the powders they used, starting with the Spear manual, since we're going Spear bullets. And just to get an idea, what does this cartridge like as far as, does it like slow powders? Does it like the medium powders? And as we go through here, I'm looking and I'm seeing the highest velocity, 2,793 feet per second, with IMR 4831. All right, so that's a pretty slow powder there. All right, then I'm seeing 2767 with H414, but they're using Magnum primers with it. I shouldn't have to use a Magnum primer with that, so I'm kind of questioning that. Pretty good velocity with IMR 4350 at 2758. And Winchester 760, 2,770 feet per second. So that's our highest performing powders in this cartridge. All right, so that gives us, it's kind of that slow to mid-range, or what I'd call the medium slow powders. All right, so now I'm going to go over here to the Nosler book, and I'm going to see what it has. And if we go to 257 Roberts, 120 grain, all right, I'm seeing IMR 7828 as their fastest at 2810. All right, that's a really slow burning powder. All right, and then next, IMR 4831, H380, back to that medium slow, H4350, IMR 4350. So I can see already that this cartridge likes the really slow burning powders as far as velocity. Okay, well that gives us a starting point. But the problem is that to get your maximum velocities out of those really slow burning powders, you need at least a 24, if not 26 inch barrel. And sure enough, they're doing their load testing with 24 inch barrels, Spear and Nosler. We got a 22 inch barrel. I'm probably not getting those velocities out of that 22 inch barrel with those really slow powders. So that's leading me to think, okay, maybe those medium slow powders like the IMR 4350, the H380, the Winchester 760, that's kind of what I'm thinking might give us the best results out of that 22 inch barrel. All right, so if I come over here to the Sierra manual, go to 257 Roberts. All right, we go to the 117, 120 grain bullets. All right, we're looking at, and I just checked, and Sierra used a 22 inch barrel for their load data. And they're showing their highest velocity with IMR 4350, 2,800 feet per second. And they've also got RE19 reloader and reloader 22. So that's kind of confirming in the Sierra book what I was thinking, is that the really slow burning powders that I'm seeing the best velocities out of with Nosler and Spear, that's 24 inch barrels. All right, and then when I look at the Sierra data, and those slower medium burn rate powders, the 4350, Winchester 760, H380, that's looking like what we want. And I thought about trying the H380. I've got some of that on hand, but Spear was showing some extremely low velocities with the H380. Now, I don't know if that's just their rifle didn't like it. It just didn't get along with the 120 grain hot core. I don't know why they're showing such low velocities, 2482, whereas Nosler's showing 2,790 with the same powder for the 120 grain bullets. All right, so I think we're just going to go with the IMR 4350. That one's consistent across the board. And keep in mind, I don't use just whatever load data with whatever bullet. I use Nosler load data with Nosler bullets, and I use Spear load data with Spear bullets. But I will look across all three as far as just to figure out, when combined with the burn rate chart, just to figure out kind of what area do we need to be in on burn rate. All right, and that 4350 is just, it's a consistent good performer across the board. And again, Spear, their top performer, or right there with the reloader powders, their top velocity with 22-inch barrel. For brass, that's really simple. Winchester brass, and it's because I had some and I'm thankful I do, because 257 Roberts brass is not easy to come by at the moment. So I'm grateful on that, and we're using what we got. Primers. All right, this one's a tough one. In the past, I built all of my loads using Federal Match Premium primers. Not because it's better or worse necessarily than anything else. It's just that it always did a good job for me. They were pretty much the same price as everything else, and I could get them locally. So I just stuck with it and built all my loads on those. All right, times have changed. We're in a different world now. Y'all know that. I'm thankful to have the powder and primers and brass that I do. All right, and I keep an eye on what's out there and what's available, and I'm seeing some brands come back, and then some brands I just haven't really seen in 2 years. Okay, so as far as primers, I haven't seen any Federal Match primers in a long time as far as used or auction or gun show or something with high prices. But I have seen CCIs. Matter of fact, I checked Midway right before I came out here, and they had CCI Magnum small rifle primers, and they had CCI small pistol primers, and they had CCI percussion caps. And I do see the CCI primers from time to time at Midway, Brownells, Natchez, that type thing. Okay. And I'm noticing this with everything. Okay, not just primers, powder. I see the occasional IMR show up on Midway. They've got a little bit now. I've seen a lot of accurate powders show up on Midway. All right, so for myself, I'm wanting to build my new loads off of the things that I think are going to be more readily available in the near future. I'm seeing SIG brass starting to show up at places. All right, I haven't seen any new Winchester brass, Remington brass, or any of that in a long time. They're making cartridges. So with that in mind, and there's some politics going on here too. All right, so all the supply chain stuff, all the craziness going on abroad. All right, so a lot of our powders here in the U.S. are made in Trudeauistan, formerly known as Canada, and Australia. And Australia done kind of lost their minds too with the authoritarian stuff. Which, that might have something to do with why I haven't been seeing many IMR powders or most of the Hodgson powders are from Australia. Most of the IMR powders are Trudeauistan. And then the accurate powders, most of them are made in Florida. Okay, so I think that explains why I've been seeing so many more of the accurate powders show up. And then even with primers. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, Federal premium primers are made in Minnesota. A lot of stupid been going on in Minnesota for a while now, unfortunately. whereas CCI is made in Lewiston, Idaho. Okay, and this isn't about politics. This is just about getting what I need. And if I'm not seeing what I need for a couple of years, but then, this shows up, different brand, but it'll work. All right, well, that's what I'm basing my new loads on. Now, I've got Federal premium primers put back that I've got quite a few. Well, I've got more than enough to build cartridges where I've already developed the loads with those primers. All right, so I'm going to save those primers for those loads, but in my new loads going forward, I'm going to start using the CCI, and then I'm going to slowly start transitioning, I think, on my powders to accurate powders. And I'd rather use the IMRs, but they're just a lot harder to get, especially the hydrogen powders. I've been saying, if I can't get them, it doesn't matter how much I like them. And with that, our test rounds are ready to go. I went ahead and loaded up these cartridges here, and I didn't show all the steps in the process. And if anybody wants to see my reloading process, I'll leave links below to an in-depth 4-part video on that. So yeah, I skipped all that for this one. But what I do is, for my testing, I drop down from the max charge in 1% increments. And so that gives me 5 different 4-shot groups here to try. And hopefully, one of them's going to meet our accuracy goals for this rifle. And then that'll take care of at least our first goal for this project, which is sub-MOA groups with the heavier 115 and 117 grain bullets. All right, so I hate to leave you hanging, but that's where we're at. And we're not going to know what we got until we go to the range this coming weekend. And as far as setup on the rifle, normally before I do my loading, I would have gone through the setup and scope and all that. But there really wasn't anything to set up on this rifle. It came with a 3x9x40 loophole, which is just going to be perfect for this rifle. I've got a 2x7x33 on my XTR, 3x9x40. It's close enough. And I mentioned the weight difference before. That's part of the weight difference. But it's only about an ounce. I believe the rest of that's going to come in the stock. But let's hit our accuracy goal first, and then we're going to go from there, and then we're going to try to figure out how weight affects our accuracy. One thing at a time here. So I will see y'all at the range next time, and I can't wait to see what it does. God bless, and y'all have a wonderful day.